Thank you so much, Daniel, for the introductions. This way I don't need to self-introduce myself and the topic. I think you, Daniel, introduced myself really well, working at the Linux Foundation. Most of the time, I'm working in two specific Linux Foundation projects. One is TODO Group, the other one is Developer Relations Foundation. That project is just starting, and we're just like in the intent to form actually, but really excited for this new initiative to take shape. And in the my spare time, I also try to contribute to other open source projects as much as I can here at InnerSource Commons, also Chaos or OpenChain. Related to my background, I consider myself some sort of hybrid. I really started actually in marketing, and then I wanted to get more into technical skills. So that's why I started a master in data science when I was in my previous job at Vitergia. And recently, I finished another master more into the front end side because I felt like I was missing some skills more from the front end. I was more in back end because of the data science master. So I decided to also take some knowledge and skills on that to help me in my day-to-day job as project manager. So that's myself. And before starting to the topic of today, I wanted to share with you a use case. This is anonymous and was actually an open source scenario that I faced it, but I've changed it a bit to meet with inner source case. And this way I can explain better why I want to talk about the importance of developer relations skills. What are really developer relations? Because that is a really wide term, and depending on the person you talk to, they're going to be defining it differently. And why so important when dealing with community? Why so important the aspect on community in inner source and the projects you're inner sourcing? So let's think about in a company, whatever, an XYZ company, there is a developer or a group of developers working in one of the business units of the company. And they're always interacting with an internal API to get some queries on certain data, to retrieve some data. And they said, we just found that, or we found that there are some endpoints that we can improve the security, and we can find some sort of solution that finds API endpoints with potential vulnerabilities. So they're starting to develop this kind of solution as a library or something to include. And this group of developer talk to their manager. The manager can be a CDO, or there can be inner source program office manager. So whoever is reporting to. But overall should be a person that has a holistic view of what's going on in the company, on what's going on in the engineering team. And that person understands if that solution that those developers are developing can be valuable for all the business units or all the teams within the organization. So this manager sees that potential, see that that can help the efficiency on other business units, and by inner sourcing that, it can get great benefits in terms of developer efficiency and don't reinventing the wheel. So the manager said, hey, why not inner sourcing? I think this can help many other open source projects in other business unit. So from that, the developer or group of developers that now we're going to call it like original creators starts working with different teams to enable this project to be inner source, to be shared in a repo, can be GitHub or can be GitLab, for other business units in the organizations to have access and to be able to see that code and use it and even make contributions. So they need to go through some checks and bypass, and so they are working with the legal team, they are working with the security team, they are working with the platform team even, and any of the teams that need, in order to be compliance ready and in order to meet like all the automations and be aligned with the internal processes and policies of the organization. And that is going to be done through an issue tracker. As I mentioned, it can, if it's GitHub, it will be like GitHub issues. If it's GitHub, it will be GitLab issues, whatever, any issue tracker they want to choose. And they might be 1, 2, 3 pull requests if it's GitHub. So when they are serving the code into the platform code, that can be any of these options. And they won't be only serving the code, but they will be serving like a quick start guide, contribution guide, a README file. So, we are talking, it's not just a group of developers sharing the code for all the business units to see. We are talking of a project that has good initial documentation for actually a community to start working on it. Like they have a quick start guide for anyone to use locally. They have an IP notice, they have a vulnerability risk disclosure. So people, for instance, if they see any security issues, they can report and they know how to report for this specific project and so on. So we are talking on a project that has not just the code, but also like clear documentation to get started. So once that is done, they can finally merge that pull request. They can finally share this with other business units in the company. And this is really, really excited because all the work that these developers have been putting to have this project to solve an issue that the manager mentioned that can be also help all the business units is finally out there. And all the people can see it and all the people can use it. And if the creators of those code can be really, really excited that this is finally happened. So, and in a positive scenario, in an ideal scenario, what happened next will be seeing the project bloom, and the original creator will see how what they did is helping others. So they will be expecting more adoption and more usage of that project. Maybe they will be expecting new contributors joining to improve that and to share frequent updates of that solution. There will be some maintenance of the project, and maybe in the future, the initial use case will lead to other use cases that they weren't thinking, so the functionality of the solution will expand. And this is a really positive scenario, because if we go back to the use case that I shared when the developer were working with all these teams, I don't know if you saw this, but I never mentioned anything around community or any team helping on the community side of that. And that is really important because without community, all those expectations can never happen, and the reality might be really sad because all the efforts, all the resources spent, maybe it just gets into that. And I've InnerSource this project, but that InnerSource project never gets attention, never gets usability, never gets contributions. And it's really, really frustrating, especially for those developers that spend the time to make that project into an InnerSource project. And that harms not just the developers, but also the company. So for the developers, I already mentioned some of the risks that can lead to that. So the developers can lose recognition. Um, they can be less motivated maybe for the next time. They might say like, no, I have all the things to do because, well, I didn't get like a lot of I did not get recognition. I did not get something positive from my last experience. They might be missing learning opportunities. So when there is a community and there is feedback and there is someone else sharing information on ways to improve, the original creator also learns from that. And if there is no community, if there is not that feedback, that opportunity is missed. And they might find some sort of imposter syndrome, like all the time spent into getting that project outside. I mean, not within the organization, but outside their team. It wasn't as expected. And also for the company, and I think this is really important, can also take some risk. For instance, around talent retention challenges. If the developers they don't feel motivated, maybe those developers might be more thinking more about, oh, maybe this is not my role, maybe I should move to another role. The resources that they have been spending to inner source that project, not just for the developers working on that project, but also the hours spent from the security teams, the hours spent from the compliance team to make that project inner source for nothing, because at the end it just was released and the activity stopped there. And what is really a difficult thing also might be an erosion of trust in inner source. Maybe the company might think, well, why are we spending resources? Why are we spending time of our developers to inner source this? This is not working. This is nonsense. And that is completely a false idea. But because their experience is telling them that if this is not working, they might be feeling that. And that can put on risk the concept of inner sourcing project because of this resource allocation. They feel like it's taking too much time and it's inefficient and so on. And all of that is because the part of the community wasn't maybe so important at the beginning. It was really more, I totally understand, right? Like companies are going to spend more time on the compliance security because that is a direct risk for them. The bad part of this is that community usually doesn't feel like a high risk, a high direct risk, but when you think on the indirect risk, it's really important, because if you don't think to put community first at the very beginning, then you have spent so many resources to get something, but then the part of the growth and sustainability of the project is nonsense. Security and compliance is great, but it's not gonna save you from all this growth of the community and the security of the community if there are not other topics taken put on the table at the very beginning. And that's why I feel like there is the importance of having this holistic approach when inner sourcing a project. And this is a learning that I took from the open source sphere. And that's why I wanted to talk about the importance of building DevRel skills. And I wanted to bring it to the open source sphere because, well, I'm working now as a project manager for an open source foundation that is the Linux Foundation. And part of my job is related with DevRel skills. And when thinking about that, I felt like when doing inner source, there is a lot of things that these skills can be applied also with internal communities. And I wanted to bring this to the table. So for instance, this is an example that I do in my day-to-day work as open source manager. I have to facilitate contributions and collaboration. I have to be able to enable this knowledge sharing from contributors. I do advocate for developers, or if they are not developers, or any other contributions to the project, and hear and do active listening. I need to build trust and build the community. And I also have to build use cases for others to get inspiration of, this can be a path to follow. And maybe there are others that have any other ideas, and thus promote some sort of let the community to experiment and to fail and to try, right? So all that needs a lot of skills. That is not just the developers. Having someone or a group of people capable to manage that community and capable of doing this facilitation and this encouragement and this motivation, and planning the strategy of the community, planning the roles, the different escalation paths and career ladders for the contributors, like all this kind of planning and a structure and a strategy around community is important. And having someone capable of doing that and having those skills is important. And also, even when we are talking about internal communities. So from the open source DevRel use case, that is the one that I've shared with you, and this comes from an open source foundation that is a different topic. I just wanted to put here on the table, what about moving that skills and having these internal DevRels, and the same that there are security teams, and the same way that there are compliance team working with those developers to get that project InnerSource, having a staff, a professional staff capable to lead the grow and nurture this internal contributor community. And here are some cross-functional skills that I think these people must have: a mix between technical and communication. So I've heard a lot of, for instance, in TODO group, there are a lot of OSPO, Open Source Program Office leaders, and they work closely with a lot of people, internal people with communications skills, but they lack of technical skills. And sometimes, I mean, that is good on one side, because that communications people usually understand the needs of the company and how the different business units communicate, but they lack the open culture that, for instance, if you come from an open source sphere, if you come from the technical side, maybe you're going to understand better. So finding someone or a group of people able to speak the both languages is important. And here were just like some skills that I feel like is important when dealing with community, that can be also put into perspective when developing this idea of the internal DevRels for inner source projects to take care of the community. And just to put it as a wrap up, I'm not gonna spend more time into this call, because I also want to spend a few minutes for open discussion and see what people think. First of all, I feel that when inner sourcing a project, having a holistic approach that puts community first in the whole pipeline of and workflow on when starting from idea to fully inner sourcing a project, it's really important. I understand that companies are obsessed, and especially this year, with security and compliance. But security and compliance is just the starting point. If they want to scale, they need the community. The other thing is, if community is so important, thinking about having dedicated staff. And I wanted to introduce this internal DevRel, but it's not about the word DevRel, but more about the skills that a DevRel might have. And I feel that if that person, whatever you choose, or that team, whatever you choose, have some sort of open source experience when managing open source ecosystem, is a plus, because is, as I mentioned, it's not just having knowledge on the community, but knowing how open collaboration works and open source works, so they can implement it when doing this InnerSource and developing this internal community to contribute to new projects, incubated projects in InnerSource sphere. And finally, of course, there are open source communities like InnerSource Commons, DevRel Foundation, that can provide mentorship in case you feel like, oh, I want to learn more about these new roles, or how to get more involved into InnerSource from a community perspective, that can help these people and these specialists to share their perspective with peers and learn from peers. And yeah, that's the topic I wanted to talk about with you today. And as I mentioned, I wanted to spend some time also to do this open discussion, to hear your thoughts on what do you think about this internal DevRel. Is your company actually having some sort of role about that? What is the, like, how important is that role in your company? Do you feel that is something, if your company doesn't have that, is something that you feel that is needed? And yeah, just having that open discussion. And from that, I will stop sharing